Justin Trudeau had some interesting remarks about immigration when he was speaking before the Economic Club of New York this week. Now, the remarks were interesting because they were mostly complete and total typical Trudeau BS. Another day, another opportunity for Justin Trudeau to embarrass us abroad. Now, this time he was part of an armchair discussion with Susan Lee of Fox Business Network at a luncheon hosted by the Economic Club of New York. Now, in the discussion, Trudeau touched on a number of issues ranging from free trade to Israel. Now, I could spend all day picking apart his comments, and to some extent I probably already have, but right now I want to show you some of the untruths that Justin Trudeau told a foreign audience about Canadian domestic policy around immigration. I want to show you this first clip here. Just watch.
Actually, I'm sorry to correct you on this, but Canadians remain incredibly positive about immigration. We actually don't have a single elected anti-immigration politician anywhere in Canada, and that's because Canadians have understood that bringing in people from around the world to contribute, to work hard, to build a life for themselves, not only increases the wealth and richness of our country, but actually allows us to be better.
Okay, while maybe we don't have a single openly anti-immigration politician anywhere in Canada, the Canadian public's sentiment about immigration isn't incredibly positive, and our attitudes about immigration are hardening. The longer Trudeau stays in power, poll after poll from a range of sources, including the government's own internal polling, shows that Canadians are not tripping over themselves to get increased immigration levels. One survey done by the Government of Canada in 2016 found that when people were told there were 250,000 new immigrants coming to Canada each year, about 60% said that was the right number. But a quarter of respondents said that number was too many. Only 8% of people thought that number was too small. A study done about a year later saw the number increase to roughly 1 in 3 respondents saying that Canadians accept too many refugees and that the overall number of immigrants is already too high. The survey found that confidence in immigration levels is down all across the board. Now, documents obtained by the Canadian press through access to information show that when people were being polled by the government, they believed the number of immigrants coming to Canada every year was under 150,000. Now, when the respondents were told it was actually closer to 260,000 immigrants for the last few years, the number of people that said they felt the number was too many jumped from 23% to 32%. So now it's become unspoken government policy to not talk about the actual immigration numbers, because when people have all the information, we're just not as keen and positive on immigration as Justin Trudeau would like to tell the rest of the world we are. Now, this is the second clip. Again, it's about immigration. I'll let Trudeau speak his nonsensical garbage, and then I'll tell you why he's just making things up out of thin air here.
Yes, it requires, certainly when people arrive, particularly when they're fleeing war zones or conflict, they need support on getting their lives back together, on schooling for their kids, on education, on a certain amount of social safety net supports like healthcare and things like that. But rapidly, those people who've been given an opportunity to raise their kids in a free and welcoming society and contribute to it do indeed do that.
Trudeau says people who were brought here in this migration influx campaign promise are jumping on the opportunity to contribute to Canada, and that they are actually contributing to Canada. That may be true in some instances, but let's add a little reality to the fantasy here. After, of course, preening about how welcoming his city was and throwing support behind Justin Trudeau earlier in the year, when Justin Trudeau fired off that "Welcome to Canada" tweet that ultimately helped collapse our entire immigration and refugee system, Toronto Mayor John Tory is absolutely being mugged by the reality of the immigration situation here in Canada. Tory fired off a letter begging the federal government to provide immediate and ongoing funding for Toronto's homeless shelter system and newcomer office. Why? Because he's seen an 80% increase of refugees relying on city shelters in 1 year alone. According to food banks all across the country, they are buckling and being stretched to their limit by the influx of refugees and migrants who are relying on Canadian food banks. And closer to home for me, Solomon Haj Solomon, one of Trudeau's first influx of Syrian migrants into the country, has been on trial for sexual assaults and gropings from a spree at a water park in Edmonton last year. That's some fine integration right there. And just recently, 2 of Justin Trudeau's refugees were recently found guilty of threatening to murder their daughter, on or kill her really, because she was dating a non-Muslim man in Fredericton. They got time served, 71 days of pre-trial custody, and they walked out of the court free after their guilty plea. And another one of Justin Trudeau's Syrian refugees, he beat his wife for a half an hour and then claimed he didn't know it was a crime to beat your wife in Canada with a hockey stick for 30 straight minutes. He got 8 days in jail and 1 year of probation. Sorry, Justin Trudeau, but many of your migrants are not fitting in well, and they are not hitting the ground running when they get here. That's because Canada is taking in too many of them, too fast for us to integrate them and absorb them into our culture. And Trudeau's rosy picture of migrant life once they get here is false, and it's doing nothing to dissuade migrants from breaking the law and putting themselves in danger to creep across our border illegally. But I guess it makes for a good soundbite to be published in the foreign media by journalists who will never fact-check Trudeau on his claims. Neither Trudeau nor the mainstream media are willing to be honest with the fact that the Canadian sentiment towards illegal immigration and immigration in general is actually closer to Donald Trump's policies than Justin Trudeau's policies. That is, when Canadians have all of the information. You see, the mainstream media, journalists, and Trudeau, they all want Trudeau to be the leader of the anti-Trump cabal as much as Trudeau fancies himself to be that guy. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Part of our job as journalists is to ask questions of politicians, questions about their policies, including immigration and public safety. And that's exactly what our Rebel contributor Katie Hopkins tried to do when she asked the mayor of Molenbeek about jihadis who were living in that city. Now Katie is being sued for asking that mayor those tough questions. To learn more about Molenbeek and what Katie asked the mayor and how you can help us in Katie's legal battle, go to savehopkins.com.